Dr. Kim Hannah sat in her small office at the Earth Communications Center, staring at the quiet screen in front of her. For the past 3 weeks, something had been bothering her. The constant buzz of messages from human colonies across the galaxy was getting weaker each day. She had worked at this job for 8 years now. Every morning, she would arrive to find hundreds of new messages waiting. Reports from mining stations, family videos from farming colonies, research data from exploration ships. The communications never stopped. The humans loved to talk, and they talked about everything, but now the chatter was dying down. Hannah pulled up her daily reports and frowned. Last month, she had received over 2,000 messages per day from the outer colonies. This week, that number had dropped to less than 500. The silence was spreading like a disease, moving from the farthest human settlements toward Earth. The pattern was clear once she mapped it out. The Kepler 442 mining station had gone quiet first, 3 weeks ago. Then the agricultural colonies in the Tau Ceti systems stopped sending their weekly crop reports. Yesterday, even the busy trading post at Wolf 359 had sent its last message. Hannah tried calling these places directly, but her signals just disappeared into empty space. No responses, no error messages, nothing. It was as if these colonies had simply vanished from the galaxy. She picked up her phone and called Admiral Park Jun-ho at the Defense Force headquarters. "Admiral, we need to talk about the communication blackouts." "What blackouts?" Park sounded tired. "Are you having technical problems again?" "No, sir. Entire colonies have stopped transmitting. We haven't heard from 17 settlements in the past month." There was a long pause. 17. That seems high. Sure, it's not just 2 great failures. Hannah pulled up her charts on the main screen. "I've been tracking the pattern. The silence is moving inward from the outer rim. Each colony goes quiet suddenly in the middle of normal transmissions. No distress calls, no warnings, just ... silence. "Send me your data," Park said. "I'll look into it." But Hannah knew he wouldn't find anything. The Defense Force was stretched thin, and they had bigger problems to worry about than missing radio signals. The Galactic Council had been pressuring Earth to reduce its military presence in disputed territories. Most of the fleet was busy with diplomatic missions. 3 days later, Hannah received a message that made her blood run cold. The research station at Proxima Centauri had just sent their final transmission. Dr. Lee Minho, the station commander, had been in the middle of his daily science report when the message cut off mid-sentence. ... The stellar radiation levels are within normal parameters, and the solar panel efficiency is running at 93%. The crew is healthy, and morale is good. We should have the new mineral survey completed by next week, and I think the Council will be very interested in what we've found in the asteroid belt. The samples show traces of rare elements that could be very valuable for..." And then nothing. Hannah tried calling Proxima Centauri for hours, but her signals met only empty space. The station was gone, just like all the others. She decided to take her concerns directly to the Galactic Council. The Council met every week to discuss trade disputes and territorial agreements between the different alien species. Earth had been a member for only 30 years. Humans were still considered newcomers. The council chambers were impressive. With representatives from dozens of different worlds, the Valerians looked like tall, blue-skinned elves with silver eyes. The Drachnari were reptilian creatures with scales that changed color when they spoke. The Ethereals were beings of pure energy that appeared as floating lights. When Hannah was finally allowed to speak, she presented her data clearly. 17 human colonies have gone silent in the past month. The pattern suggests a coordinated attack or some kind of spreading threat. We need to investigate immediately. The Valerian ambassador, Zethkar, made a dismissive gesture. The humans are always having technical problems. The technology is primitive compared to ours. This is probably just a series of equipment failures. But the pattern, Hannah began, shows nothing more than the expected failures of inferior technology, interrupted the Drachnari representative. Young species often expand too quickly and cannot maintain their communications over long distances. This is a common problem. Ethereal delegates' light pulsed slowly. We have observed similar patterns with dozens of emerging civilizations. Rapid expansion, followed by communication breakdown. It is part of the natural learning process. Hannah felt frustrated. But these colonies had been operating successfully for years. Their equipment was working fine until it suddenly stopped. They are simply choosing to be quiet, suggested the Valerian. Many species go through periods of isolation as they mature. The constant chatter from human worlds has been noted by our monitoring stations. Perhaps your people are finally learning the value of silence. The other council members made sounds of agreement. To them, the human tendency to communicate constantly was seen as a sign of immaturity. A truly advanced civilization would have no need for such constant contact. Hannah left the meeting feeling defeated. Nobody believed her warnings. The galaxies. Most powerful civilizations saw the growing silence as a sign of human progress. It's not a reason for concern, but deep in her heart, she knew the truth. The silence wasn't progress. It was a warning, and if nobody listened, the consequences would be terrible for everyone. 2 weeks after the council meeting, Dr. Kim Hannah watched her communication screens with growing horror. The silence was spreading faster now, jumping from system to system like a wildfire. What had started as a few quiet colonies had become a wave of darkness rolling toward Earth. Admiral Park Jun-ho stood behind her desk, studying the star map she had prepared. Red dots marked the silent colonies, and the pattern was unmistakable. The silence moved in a straight line from the outer rim toward the center of human space, following the same routes that supply ships and passenger vessels used every day. How many now? Park asked quietly. 43 colonies, Hannah replied, her voice tight with worry. And it's accelerating. We lost 6 more yesterday alone. Park rubbed his tired eyes. He'd been trying to get help from the Defense Force, but most of his ships were scattered across the galaxy on diplomatic missions. The few patrol vessels he could spare had been sent to investigate the quiet zones, but none had returned. What about the council? He asked. Have they changed their minds? Hannah shook her head. They're still convinced it's just technical problems. The Valerian ambassador actually thanked me yesterday for humanity's improved communication discipline. They think we're finally learning to be quiet like civilized species. On the other side of the galaxy, alien monitoring stations continued their daily work without concern. Technician Vextai, a young Drachnari working at the Centauri, listening post, had noticed the decreasing volume of human transmissions over the past month. His supervisor, an elderly ethereal named Lumara, seemed pleased by the change. The human noise pollution has decreased by 60%, Vextai reported during their morning briefing.
Our
Long-range sensors are picking up much clearer signals. From the other sectors now? Lumara's energy field glowed with satisfaction. Excellent. Perhaps the humans are finally maturing as a species. Their constant chatter was becoming quite annoying. Vextai felt uneasy. I'd been monitoring human communications for 3 years, and he knew their patterns well. Humans didn't just stop talking. They talked about everything, their work, their families, their dreams, their fears. The sudden silence felt wrong to him. Sir, he said carefully, should we perhaps investigate why the communications have stopped? It seems unusual for such a talkative species to become so quiet so quickly. Lumara's light pulsed with mild irritation. Do not question the natural development of younger species, Vextai. The humans are simply learning wisdom. This is how civilizations grow. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Commander Lee Minho commanded the border patrol vessel Harmony as it traveled through what had once been busy human space. The ship's sensors showed empty systems where thriving colonies should have been. No radio signals, no ship traffic, no signs of life at all. Sir, reported his communications officer, we're approaching the Kepler 442 system. This was where the first colony went silent. Minho nodded grimly. Take us in slowly. Full sensor sweep. As the Harmony entered the system, the crew saw something that made their blood run cold. The mining station was still there, but it looked completely different. The familiar domes and landing pads had been replaced by strange metallic structures that pulsed with an eerie blue light. Massive mechanical arms extended from the station, processing asteroids with terrifying efficiency. Are those ... humans? Whispered the sensor operator, pointing at the screen. Through the viewports, you could see figures moving around the station. They had the general shape of humans, but their movements were too mechanical, too precise. They worked without rest, without pause, like machines. "Get us out of here," Minho ordered. "Now." But as the Harmony tried to leave, their communication system went dead. The ship's computer began displaying error messages in languages they didn't recognize. Minho realized with growing terror that something was trying to take control of their ship. "Cut all external connections," he shouted. "Shut down everything except life support and engines." The crew worked frantically to isolate their systems. Just as mechanical tendrils began reaching toward their ship from the station, the Harmony managed to jump to hyperspace. They escaped, but barely. Back on Earth, Admiral Park received Minho's report with growing alarm. The few patrol ships that had managed to return all told similar stories. The silent colonies weren't abandoned, they were changed, transformed into something alien and terrible. "We need to warn the Council," Park told Hannah. "This isn't just a communication problem. Something is converting our colonies." But when they tried to contact the Council, they found that alien interest in human affairs had reached an all-time low. The Valerians had stopped attending meetings about human territorial disputes. The Drekanari were focusing on their own expansion projects. The Ethereals had declared human space a quiet zone, and were actively avoiding the area. "They're not listening," Hannah said after another failed attempt to reach the Council. "They think our silence is a good thing. They don't realize it's a warning." As the days passed, more colonies went dark. The silence spread like a plague, moving closer to Earth with each passing day. Supply ships stopped arriving. Passenger vessels disappeared without a trace. The vast network of human civilization was being systematically dismantled, and nobody in the galaxy seemed to care. In the monitoring stations, alien technicians continued to celebrate the decreased noise pollution from human space. They had no idea that the silence they welcomed was actually the sound of an ancient enemy awakening. Using humanity's own expansion routes as a roadmap to the heart of the galaxy, the darkness was spreading, and nobody was listening to the warnings. Captain Song Yuna had never seen anything like it. The research vessel Pioneer floated in the shadow of what used to be New Sol Colony. But the settlement bore no resemblance to the farming community that had once thrived here. Massive black towers stretched up from the planet's surface, connected by bridges that pulsed with sickly green light. The familiar domes where families had lived and worked were gone, replaced by geometric structures that hurt to look at. "Captain," whispered Dr. Choi Juan from the science station, "I'm detecting human life signs down there. Thousands of them." Yuna felt her heart skip. "Are they alive? Can we contact them?" Juan's face went pale as she studied her readings. They're moving, but the patterns are wrong. It's regular, it's coordinated. And their body temperatures are much lower than normal human ranges." Through the main view screen, they could see figures working around the base of the towers. From a distance, they looked human, but something was terribly wrong with the way they moved. They worked in perfect synchronization, never stopping, never resting, like parts of a giant machine. "Take us down," Yuna ordered. "But keep the engines ready for immediate departure." The Pioneer landed on a flat area that had once been the colony's main square. As the landing ramp lowered, Yuna and her team stepped out onto the surface. The air was breathable. It carried a strange metallic smell that made their noses burn. The working figures paid no attention to the newcomers. Yuna approached one of them carefully. The person had been a woman once, probably in her 30s. But now her skin had a gray, metallic sheen. Wires and tubes ran from her spine to a small device attached to her neck. Her eyes were still human, but they stared straight ahead without seeing anything. "My God," breathed Dr. Choi. "They've been turned into biological machines." As they explored the transformed colony, the horrible truth became clear. Settlement's population hadn't been killed. They had been converted. Every human had been surgically modified with mechanical parts, their minds connected to a central network that controlled their actions. They worked constantly, processing raw materials into more mechanical components in what had been the colony's communication center. They found the source of the transformation. A massive machine sat in the center of the room, its surface covered in symbols that seemed to shift and change when looked at directly. Cables ran from the machine to every building in the colony, creating a web of control that encompassed the entire settlement. Dr. Choi ran her scanner over the machine. Captain, this technology is incredibly advanced. Metal composition includes elements I don't recognize. And the design. It's not human or from any known alien species. How old is it? Yuna asked. The isotope decay suggests it's been dormant for thousands of years, maybe longer. But something woke it up recently. As they studied the machine, more pieces of the puzzle fell into place. The device wasn't just controlling the colonists, it was learning from them. Every human it connected to added to its knowledge of human technology, human expansion routes, human weaknesses. It's using our own people as a database, Yuna realized with horror. Every colony it converts tells it where to find the next one. They found records in the machine's databanks, written in a language that seemed to translate itself as they read it. The entities that had built these machines called themselves the Devourers. They had traveled across the galaxy for millions of years, consuming entire civilizations and converting their populations into components for their ever-growing network. The records showed that the Devourers had been dormant for millennia, waiting in the empty spaces between stars. But humanity's rapid expansion had awakened them. Human ships had stumbled across their sleeping forms and accidentally activated their ancient programming. They're not just attacking randomly, Dr. Choi said as she read through the data. They're following our colonization routes. Every human settlement is connected to others through trade routes and communication networks. The Devourers are using those connections like a roadmap. The most chilling discovery came when they found the communication logs. The machine had been sending signals to other Devourer units throughout the galaxy, sharing information about human technology and defenses, but more importantly, it had been tracking the silence. The colonies weren't just being converted, Yuna realized. They were cutting their own communications to try to break the chain. Each settlement chose to go silent, rather than reveal the locations of other human worlds. The sacrifice of the outer colonies had been deliberate. Faced with conversion or helping the enemy find other human settlements, the colonists had chosen to destroy their own communication equipment. The silence that Dr. Kim Hanna had been tracking wasn't a sign of defeat. It was a warning. But the Devourers had been prepared for this. They had learned from previous civilizations that had tried the same desperate tactic, and the machines didn't need constant communication to find their next targets. They had already extracted enough information from the early conquests to map most of human space. As the pioneer prepared to leave the transformed colony, Yuna looked back at the towers that had once been homes. Somewhere in those structures, thousands of humans continued their mechanical work. Their minds trapped in artificial bodies, their humanity slowly being drained away. "We have to warn Earth," she told her crew, "and we have to make sure the Council understands what we're really facing." But as they jumped to hyperspace, none of them knew that the Devourers had already begun their final approach toward the galaxy's core. Following the routes that humanity had so helpfully provided through decades of expansion and exploration. The revelation had come too late. The enemy was already inside the gates. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike anything the ancient chambers had ever seen. For the first time in centuries, every representative was present, their usual calm replaced by barely controlled panic. The Valerian ambassador Zethkar stood at the center of the room, his normally pristine blue skin pale with fear. "The outer territories of our empire have gone silent," he announced, his voice shaking. 17 star systems, including our major trading hub at Arcturus Prime. No distress signals, no warnings, just ... silence. Dr. Kim Hanna sat in the human delegation section, feeling no satisfaction at being proven right. Captain Song Yuna stood beside her, ready to present the evidence they had gathered from the transformed colonies. But the Council was no longer. Dismissing human concerns as primitive hysteria, the Draknari military commander, General Crystal slammed his clawed hand on the table. It's the same pattern the humans described. Our border worlds are being attacked by something that converts entire populations into mechanical servants. We sent a fleet to investigate, but only one ship returned. What did they find? The ethereal delegate, Lumera, her energy field flickering with anxiety. The same thing Captain Song discovered at the human colonies. Our people are still alive, but they're no longer themselves. They work without rest, building more machines, expanding the network, and they're using our own trade routes to find new targets. The ancient crystalline representative, who rarely spoke during council sessions, began to vibrate with alarm. We have encountered these entities before, in the distant past. Our historical records speak of the Devourer's machines that consume civilizations and use their knowledge to spread across the galaxy. How do we fight them? Demanded the Valerian ambassador. You don't, the crystalline replied grimly. Previous civilizations that encountered them were completely absorbed. The Devourers learn from every mind they connect to, becoming stronger and more adaptable with each conquest. Meanwhile, on Earth, Commander Kong Taiho worked frantically. In his underground research facility, the Covert Science Division had been analyzing the Devourer technology that Captain Song had brought back from the transformed colonies. The devices were incredibly advanced, but Taiho had found something interesting in their design. They're networked, he explained to Admiral Park Jun-ho during their secret meeting. Every machine is connected to every other machine. That's their strength. They can share information and coordinate across vast distances instantly. And their weakness, Park asked. The same thing. If we could introduce a virus into their network, it would spread to every connected unit. But we'd need a way to get close enough to one of their central nodes. Park studied the tactical displays showing the Devourer advance. The machines were moving faster now, having absorbed enough civilizations to significantly increase their processing power. They were no longer following the slow, methodical pattern of the early attacks. Now they struck multiple targets simultaneously, overwhelming defenses before anyone could respond. How long do we have? Park asked. At their current rate of expansion, they'll reach Earth in 6 months, Taiho replied. But that's assuming they continue their current strategy. If they decide to make a direct assault on the galactic core, weeks, Park finished grimly. Back at the council chambers, the debate had turned to evacuation plans. The Valerians wanted to retreat to their homeworld and hoped the Devourers would pass them by. The Drachnari proposed a fighting retreat to the galactic rim. The Ethereals suggested abandoning physical form entirely and existing as pure energy. But Dr. Kim Hanna had a different idea. She stood up from her seat, drawing the attention of the assembled delegates. We're thinking about this wrong, she said. You're all planning to run or hide, but that won't work. The Devourers have been doing this for millions of years. They know how civilizations respond to threats. What do you propose? Asked Sethkar. We use their own tactics against them. They've been using our communication networks and trade routes to track us. But what if we could use their network to track them? The council delegates looked confused, but Hannah continued. My government has been working on a plan. We can't fight them with conventional weapons, but we might be able to fight them with information. A virus that could spread through their network and shut them down from within. Possible, scoffed the Drachnari general. Their technology is far beyond ours. Not beyond ours, Hannah corrected. Beyond yours. But humans have something you don't. We're expendable. We're willing to sacrifice ourselves to stop a threat. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The other species had spent millennia building their civilizations, accumulating knowledge and power. The idea of sacrificing everything they had built was unthinkable to them, but humans were different. They'd always been willing to sacrifice themselves for the greater good. And now, faced with a threat that could destroy all life in the galaxy, they were prepared to make the ultimate sacrifice. What do you need from us? Asked Lumara quietly. Time, Hannah replied, and a promise that if we fail, you'll remember. What we tried to do, as the council session ended, the delegates returned to their worlds to prepare for the coming darkness. But for the first time since the crisis began, there was a glimmer of hope. The humans had a plan. They were willing to pay any price to see it succeed. the galaxy's youngest and most reckless species, had become its last hope. The Devourer fleet emerged from hyperspace like a dark tide, thousands of converted ships. Spreading across Earth's solar system, each vessel had once belonged to a different species, Valerian cruisers, Drachnary battleships, even the elegant ethereal light craft, all now twisted into mechanical horrors that pulsed with the same sickly, green energy. Dr. Kim Hanna stood on the bridge of the orbital station Last Hope, watching the enemy approach. Around her, the remnants of humanity's defense fleet took their positions. They were vastly outnumbered, but that had always been part of the plan. "All stations report ready," announced Admiral Park Jun-ho from the command center on Earth. "Network interface is online." Anna nodded and activated her communicator. "This is Dr. Kim Hanna to all human settlements. The time has come. Remember, we are not fighting to win. We are fighting to ensure that life itself survives." Across the solar system, millions of humans prepared for the final phase of their desperate plan. In underground bunkers on Earth, in mining stations on the asteroids, in the colonies on Mars and Europa, people sat down at specially modified communication terminals. Each terminal was connected to the global network that Commander Kong Taiho had spent months preparing. The Devourers had always used their victims' own technology against them. Now, humanity would return the favor. "Incoming transmission from the lead Devourer vessel," reported Communications Officer Lee Minho. "There, trying to interface with our systems?" "Let them," Hannah said calmly. "That's exactly what we want." The Devourer communication burst through Earth's defenses like a digital plague, seeking to convert the planet's population as it had converted countless others. The signal found the human communication network and began to spread through it, reaching every connected terminal across the solar system. But instead of finding defenseless minds to convert, the signal encountered something unexpected. At each terminal sat a human volunteer, ready to make the ultimate sacrifice. As the Devourer conversion process began, these volunteers didn't resist. Instead, they opened their minds completely, allowing the enemy to connect to their consciousness. "Neural interface established," reported Dr. Choi Juan from the medical monitoring station. "The volunteers are now connected to the Devourer network." "Vital signs?" asked Hannah. "Holding steady, but the strain is enormous. They won't last long." Plan was simple in concept, but terrible in execution. The Devourers converted biological minds into mechanical servants by connecting them to their network. But what if those minds were already carrying a weapon? What if the consciousness being absorbed was infected with a virus designed to spread through the network itself? On Earth, an elderly farmer named Kim Do-soo sat at his terminal in a small village outside Seoul. The Devourer conversion process washed over him. He felt his mind being pulled into the vast mechanical network. But instead of fighting it, he welcomed it. Hidden in his consciousness was a piece of code that Taiho's team had spent months perfecting. "The virus is spreading," reported Taiho from his underground laboratory. "I can see it moving through their network. It's working." Da-da! Virus was unlike anything the Devourers had encountered before. It wasn't a traditional computer program, but a hybrid of human consciousness and digital code. As it spread through the network, it carried with it the one thing that machines couldn't process: the concept of willing sacrifice. Each infected node began to question its own existence. The Devourers had always operated on the principle that all life sought to preserve itself. But the human volunteers were choosing to die for others, a concept that created cascading errors in the mechanical minds. "Devourer ships are showing system failures," reported Captain Song Yuna from the patrol vessel Unity. "Their formation is breaking apart, but the cost was terrible. Every human connected to the network was burning out their own nervous system to carry the virus deeper into the Devourer consciousness." On Mars, a young engineer named Park Soo-jin felt her heart failing as she pushed the virus into another layer of the network. On Europa, a teacher named Choi Min-woo used his last breath to corrupt a critical processing node. "We're losing people." "Fast," reported Dr. Choi. "The neural overload is killing them." Hannah watched her screens as the virus spread through the Devourer fleet. Ship after ship went dark as their artificial minds struggled to process the contradiction of willing self-sacrifice. The concept was like a poison to them, corrupting their most basic programming. "The core network is destabilizing," announced Taiho. "But we need to push the virus deeper. We need to reach their central command node." Dr. Kim Hanna looked at her console and made the decision that would define humanity's legacy. "Connect me to the network." "Hannah, no," pleaded Admiral Park. "You're too important. We need you to survive. We need the virus to reach the core," she replied calmly. "And I know the network better than anyone else." As Hannah connected herself to the interface, she felt the devourer consciousness rushing toward her like a digital avalanche. But she didn't resist. Instead, she opened her mind completely. Carrying the virus deeper into the network than anyone had managed before, the galaxy watched in amazement as the devourer fleet began to shut down. Ship after ship went silent, their crews finally free from the mechanical tyranny that had enslaved them. The ancient enemy that had consumed civilizations for millions of years was finally defeated. Brought down by the willing sacrifice of a species they had dismissed as primitive in the aftermath. The few surviving humans became the galaxy's guardians, their sacrifice remembered in every star system they had saved. The Council learned that sometimes the greatest strength comes not from power or technology, but from the willingness to give everything for others. The silence that had once been humanity's warning became their final gift to the galaxy.